I think it would be most appropriate to start off this video with a quote. A quote from one of the wisest men to ever live. I am, of course, referring to Jackie Chan's uncle from the Jackie Chan Adventures cartoon show. One more thing! That's right, there is one more thing to discuss about the last chapter, chapter 957, and that is, of course, geography. Precious, precious geography. Unfortunately, we can't go too into detail about it because we don't know much about this place yet. So this is not a geography is everything. This is more of a preliminary discussion revolving around the nature of geography of God Valley, also known as the battleground, where Roger and Garp teamed up 38 years ago to lay the beat down on the Rocks crew. A battle so intense. Garp was throwing around fists. Roger and his mustache were slaying men as they went along. Rocks was throwing boulders, I guess, until we figure out what his actual power was. I'm just gonna go with that. His ability was he could just summon giant rocks and then throw them at people, alright? That's canon until we find out otherwise. Anyway, the battle here was so intense, it literally wiped God Valley off the map. Beyond that, even current Marines have, not even heard of the existence of this place. Sengoku, of course, knew about it. Garp knows about it. A lot of the members of the old guard will know about it. But as for the current crop of Marines and the citizens living in the One Piece world, this is a phantasmal island, kind of the same deal with Zou. Maybe God Valley's on the back of a giant giraffe. I don't know. Just like Zou's on the back of a giant elephant. Who knows? Maybe. There might be, hey, there's a giant elephant wandering around the New World. There could be a giant giraffe too. This is One Piece. Its neck stretches into the freaking, exosphere, how tall it is, right? Alright, that'll really break the sizing chart. But, no. So, yeah, the world government covered it up. Sengoku stated that much. He's just like, yeah, this whole incident, the whole concept of, the Marines teaming up with a pirate alone, that's dangerous. I mean, even though we had the Shishibukai system. But no, Garp teaming up with the king of the pirates, Goldie Roger, that is definitely something the world government cannot let the world know. And they definitely did not log that in the history books. They swept that under the rug. Also, Sengoku was talking about Rocks himself. Rocks was such a powerful pirate, and he basically found out so much about the world, he dug too deep, so to speak, that the world government even tried to hide his existence. This is a famous pirate that was, ruling over the world before the time of Goldie Roger, and the world government has sufficiently suppressed information about him to the point where he's just a legend. He's basically a campfire story, alright? If you talk to the Marines or the citizens about Rocks, maybe a lot of the older people might know about him, but, the new crop are just like, what? Rocks? Oh yeah, I think that was a bedtime story my mom told me, so I would go to bed early, It's like, oh, if you stay up past 11, rocks will appear and throw rocks at you. It's like, oh no, mom, I'll go to bed, right? So it's the world government has a lot of, power just to suppress this kind of stuff. You'd think this kind of thing, rocks ruling over an entire age, they wouldn't be able to just, sweep that away, but they did. Clearly they did, alright? So Sengoku just kind of wipes that away by just telling all the Marines about him. So honestly, Sengoku doesn't care anymore. Sengoku, he's, older now. He's almost 80. I think he's 79 right now, so he's pushing 80. Sengoku's like, you know what? I don't even care anymore. Tell you what, Marines, sit down on my lap. I'll tell you all the secrets that the world government doesn't want to know about. Hey, do you want to know about the Will of D? I'll tell you that. I'm sure Sengoku was right about to tell him what the Will of D stood for, but then Aki Inu walked in and interrupted that whole conversation, right? Sengoku's near the end of his life, and he knows way too much. He just probably wants to get that out there, right? Or Sengoku can kind of feel, considering all of his experience in the Marines and everything, he can kind of feel that something big is coming, something huge, right? The changing of an era, maybe, the discovery of the One Piece, possibly, the crowning of a new pirate king is on the horizon, so maybe Sengoku is like, you young Marines, you need to know this stuff. You need to know the history of how this stuff went down. The world government's just trying to hide everything from you, but no, seriously, you need to know, because it's going to prepare you for what's coming next, alright? So yeah, that's probably the deal there. So, let's talk about God Valley. We don't know where it's located. We do get a map of it, kind of, but, this is about, 3 degrees of unhelpfulness. We know it's an island in the ocean. Alright, good job, Sengoku. We know that the island of God Valley is an island. Islands are very rare in the One Piece world. You only encounter maybe 2 or 3 every decade or so, very rare. When I was reading the spoilers for the chapter over on the subreddit, I heard some people throwing out the idea that it was actually part of Elbaf, and at the beginning I thought that actually made pretty good sense. I mean, Elbaf is based off of the Nordic gods, and the Norwegian countries and everything, and of course we saw Elbaf. It's got the Yggdrasil tree and everything. So yeah, obviously Oda is going to base Elbaf off of that kind of myth. So I thought maybe having a place in Elbaf called God Valley, that would make sense as well. But no, that's clearly not the case. Sengoku states that the place God Valley is its own separate, island, not related to Elbaf. I mean, he would have just said Elbaf if it was Elbaf. It's not Elbaf. I also saw some people showing maps of Wano, especially when we get that side view of Wano whenever we were looking at the Mogura port, how the ships go in under the waterfall and then head up, to the surface of the island. And keep in mind, Wano itself is like raised up like a plateau. Like, here's the sea level, and then Wano itself just kind of juts out of the sea, and then like waterfalls just kind of rush off of it, right? And then there's like a few waterfalls actually. So it's a very weirdly shaped island. But if you look at the side view here, you see a bunch of these really tall like plateaus and like mountains and hills and things and valleys, and we see that with God Valley. But I don't think it's Wano, because Wano's been around for a very, very long time, and this is very clearly supposed to be a different place. Also, just from a storytelling perspective, that would just kind of be like lame, wouldn't it? Like, oh yes, this mysterious island called God Valley, it disappeared. No one knew what happened with it. Oh, it's Wano all along. I'd be like, no, it's a separate place, okay? It's a separate island. We've never been there before. It's the first time it was mentioned. Maybe it possibly could have been the ancient kingdom that the Oharans were talking about. If you're gonna say that, I could maybe buy that. But just to say it's been an island that the Straw Hats have already been on, or it's already been mentioned before, like Elbaf or Wano, I really am not a fan of that, okay? Yeah, plus Wano's been around for centuries and stuff. It's already been an established location, and this God Valley place apparently stopped existing about 38 years ago after the big battle. To be fair, I mean, Sengoku does not clarify why it disappeared. We are led to believe that the battle between the Rocks crew, which, included Kaido and Whitebeard and Big Mom and Shiki and Wang Ji, this battling, against Roger and Garp was so intense, it was because of that battle that the island got destroyed and, like, I don't know, got reduced to rubble, sunk below the ocean. We just make those inferences, but Sengoku did not actually state that. Sengoku did not say that the battle was so intense that it completely wiped the island off the face of the map. No, Sengoku was a lot more vague with it. He's just like, that island since that day has vanished from the maps. You will not find it. It has not been seen since. So it might have a much more mysterious reason for why it vanished. Maybe it might be related or tied to a devil fruit power in some way. I don't know, but it's no longer around, okay? So, what was God Valley? I don't think you really have to think too hard about it to figure that the Tenryubito are involved here. Alright, the Tenryubito often refer to themselves as, like, gods or deities of the world. They refer to Marijua as, like, the upper realm or, like, heaven, and the lower realm pretty much everywhere else in the world that isn't Marijua. Anyone down below the red lines, top, that's, like, the lower realm, the peasant realm, okay? So that's pretty apparent, okay? But what significance would God Valley have with them? Okay, I've heard some people throw out the idea that maybe that's where the Tenryubito lived before Marijua. I don't like that to be the case. Honestly, it seems like Marijua has been the home base of the world government ever since the founding of the organization 800-something years ago at the very end of the Void Century, okay? The land, the city of the gods, Pangaea Castle, I think that's all been there ever since the Void Century, alright? So I don't think it's like a place that the Tenryubito lived. No. So remember how the Tenryubito are kind of obsessed with dragons? I mean, their logo, their insignia is the hoof of the celestial dragons. Dragons themselves seem to have a significance in One Piece, being a dragon that was slayed by Ryuma, Dragon himself, the revolutionary, the dragons that were being developed by Vegapunk, apparently at the Tenryubito's wishes. The Tenryubito approached Vegapunk and were like, we want you to make us dragons. And Vegapunk's like, okay, I guess I'll try. And so he made a few of those dragons at Punk Hazard. You know, dragons, very significant thing here in the One Piece world that seem very closely connected to the world nobles, all right? They seem to have either some obsession with dragons, I don't know what that obsession could lead to, or, no, dragons are very integral to their history. Rather, there were dragons in the world of One Piece that were very commonplace, but now there's not dragons anymore, which led to the Tenryubito to ask Vegapunk to create new ones. Okay, so I'm going to throw out the idea that God Valley was a place where dragons reigned supreme. Not just any dragons, because there were dragons that existed at the time of Wano. Maybe they were connected to the Tenryubito as well. Maybe the Tenryubito 400 years ago or some such tried to take over Wano. You know, you will be subjugated in the world government, and then freaking Ryuma pops out of nowhere and slices the dragon's head off, and then, you know, they stayed away from Wano at that point. They're like, okay, the samurai here are simply too strong even for our mighty dragons. I really like to think that, yeah, back in the day, the Tenryubito, they flew around on dragons. Like, every member of the Tenryubito had their own dragon that they were with ever since, you know, birth, you know, like their Pokemon companion, and then they would grow up and they would ride around on dragons just terrorizing the world. That would make perfect sense for them, right? That would, like, we are the dragon gods of the world. We are the only people in the world that can properly control dragons. We can fly. Can you all fly? Can you peasants fly? Hello there, Michael McPeasant Man. Can you fly? No, sir. I just know how to plow my field. All right, well, plow this. You know, like, that would be them. That would be the Tenryubito, and that's also how they would be able to have such a lockdown on the world. I mean, not just geography, their castle being on top of the Red Line, but just the ability to fly around the world and just wipe out whatever island they wanted with their mighty dragon breath weapons. I mean, no one's gonna have an answer to that, pretty much, except for Ryuma. Ryuma had an answer to that, and it was a sword, right? But not a lot of people are gonna be able to go up against that kind of power, right? So, there has to be a place where the dragons were raised. I can't say, you know, that it isn't Marijois. It might have been Marijois, but Marijois seems to be kind of like a really pristine kind of place with the castle and with the town. You really don't want to get that destroyed. You ever read or watch Game of Thrones? You know, back in the eras where the Targaryens ruled over Westeros and they had that, you know, they ruled over King's Landing and stuff, they didn't just keep the dragons in the city. They had a special place, like a giant coliseum, essentially, where the dragons were to stay, you know, because if not, then they were just going to fly around and just burn everything to the ground, right? So it would make sense why they would have a special location, a sacred place that only the Tenryubito could visit, where their dragons were raised and, you know, bred, and, you know, where they would stay, so that, like the Chararific Valley in Pokemon, basically, right? You know, where Charizard hung out at. That's basically where they would need to go. And then the Tenryubito would go there. There might have been like a ceremony or something to give a dragon to a newborn Tenryubito, a companion that they'll have for the rest of their ages, right? And to go along with this, one of the reasons why Garp was even there at God Valley was to protect the Tenryubito and the slaves that they ruled over. That was something that Garp was really upset by, that, you know, he was fighting against Rox, and Rox was a bad guy, but he was fighting for them on behalf of the Tenryubito, and Garp doesn't like the Tenryubito. It's like his moral code doesn't click with them, you know? So it's just like, man, Roger, we're gonna have to team up and take these guys down, but even more so than teaming up with a pirate, Garp was probably more upset by the fact that they're defending the Tenryubito. They're fighting Rox so that the Tenryubito can continue to be safe and own slaves in this world. That really had to bother Garp, and you know it did, right? But he had to do it because that was his duty. He was a vice admiral, that's what he had to do. He was a marine, right? I'm sure Garp might have been a little bit upset about teaming up with Roger, but at the end of the day, I think that would, the Tenryubito thing would have bothered him a lot more, right? And so, yeah, now I am going to say that maybe Garp, maybe they won against Rox, but the island was still standing, but maybe Garp still did not want that island to be there because it was a monument to oppression that the Tenryubito have wrought all over the world. So, hey, I'm going to throw out an idea here. Roger and Garp, right? They team up and they beat down the Rox crew. We know Whitebeard and Kaido and Big Mom and Shiki, they all survived. They all got out of that alive, and they went on to, start off their own crews, and eventually some of them even became Yonko, right? Cool. But Rox himself apparently met his end at that island, at least according to Sengoku. That is where Rox perished. How about this, though? How about after they finished off Rox and his reign of terror was over, or whatever happened, whatever they did to him, the island was maybe in ruins, but the island was still standing, but then maybe Garp kind of looked over to Roger and is like, and they're all bloody and broken from the fight, but they're like, hey, Roger. Yeah, what is it, Garp? He's like, hey. Yeah, I really don't like the Tenryubito, do you? He's like, of course not, I don't like the Tenryubito. What about you? You're a Marine. He's like, yeah, I know I'm a Marine, but I really don't like the Tenryubito. And we're hanging out on a sacred land of the Tenryubito right now, and Garp and Roger are just like, yeah, we are, aren't we? Boom! And they just obliterate the island. They're just like, you know what? Let's just destroy the island, because Roger and Garp combined powers together in their heyday, in their prime. They're easily island busters. We don't even know what Roger could do back then, but probably his Conqueror's Hockey alone could shatter a mountain. Just like Garp had enough, power with his armament to slice that entire ice shelf in half. So right there, you'd figure like they could team up, and they're like, you know what? Let's just obliterate the island and call it a day. We defeated Rox, we pushed him back, but let's just loosen the grip of the Tenryubito, maybe even just a little bit in the world. If that meant getting rid of a bunch of dragons. Oh man. Now I'm picturing Garp and Roger going up against an army of dragons. Get that mental picture in your head. Like they're facing off and there's like 14, 32 dragons coming at them, and Garp's like, I'll take the 16 on the left, you take the 16 on the right. Aye, matey! And they just charge and just start beating the crap out of dragons. That would be mean. That would be mean. But hey, maybe the dragons were, they were pretty mean too. Who knows, right? How these dragons were raised. But yeah, I like to think that's the case with the Tenryubito. They controlled a bunch of dragons. God Valley is where they were raised. 38 years ago, God Valley was gone. All the dragons were wiped out. And it's like they don't have that anymore. And the Tenryubito, they still have control over the world through the Marines and through, just how much money they have. Money basically controls everything in this world. Right? So they have all the berries. So they still have other means of controlling the government and everything and the world, but, they lost their dragons. They lost their, ability to just fly around and really feel like the gods that they think they are. And that bugs them supremely. So that's why they confronted Vegapunk, and it's like, Vegapunk, we need you to make new dragons. And he was trying, but they didn't really end up perfect. They were like prototypes, and they were kind of like, there was a few things around them, like that one dragon was really tiny, and the big dragon was really imposing, but Zoro made really quick work of that, so it probably wasn't as strong as the dragons back in the day were, these might have been some really, really heavy-hitting dragons. These dragons might have been huge, like the size of freaking cruise liners. They might have had, like, spikes covering them or something, like, legitimately breathing fire, and other, maybe like Godzilla's atomic breath, like, they might have been that kind of dragons, and then the place where they lived got wiped out, and it got sunk below the ocean. Or you could take this into a mystical stance, maybe the land of God Valley, it's been around for ages. Maybe the dragons were not always bad, all right? Maybe like thousands of years ago, God Valley has existed and the dragons were cultivated. But when the world government got together and formed their organization, then the Tenryubito came into play, they took over God Valley. There might have been people living there that were taking care of these dragons very peacefully. Kind of reminding of, you ever watch the ancient Magus Bride, when they have that place with all the dragons chilling out and Chisei goes there and meets Nevin with the one. That's a great anime, by the way. The freaking ancient Magus Bride. Go watch it, please. It's so good. But anyway, yeah, it might have been like a peaceful sanctuary for dragons like that. Then everything changed when the Tenryubito attacked the island, took it over, took control of the dragons, and then for a few centuries, ever since the Void Century, they were controlling these dragons for their own desires. But then maybe something happened, and maybe after the whole fight with Rox, maybe the people that originally lived there, maybe maybe there were magic or something. Maybe there's like legitimate wizards in One Piece or something. I don't know. And they were like, we will hide this island so that it will never be found again. Because God Valley, I feel like they have to go to God Valley. So I don't think it's like completely destroyed like rubble and it's just, oh, okay, well, it's gone now. No, I think it's still around, but it might be hidden through various mysterious means, all right? It's not Raftel or Laugh-Tale because Roger found that location well after the God Valley incident, so God Valley cannot be Raftel. I threw around around the idea that God Valley might be the last island in the Grand Line that the log points to, but I like to think that, it might be really hard to get to that island, but not impossible. So I like to think it's not like the Straw Hats are going to be the first people on Last Island since Roger. I feel like it's the last island that the log post points to. It's the location where you find out about the existence of the road poneglyphs. It's not Laugh-Tale, but it's like it points you in the direction of it. So it's like I like to think there's other people on that island, and it's not like a completely, locked down, like isolated place. It's hard to get to, but not impossible. So I don't think God Valley's that place. So I think God Valley is just another phantasmal island somewhere in the world being hidden by mysterious means. Maybe the dragons, maybe there were like dragon sages, like there weren't even people living on the island. The dragons, because dragons usually, typically, when you're talking about them in the lore of like, Arthurian mythology and stuff, a lot of times dragons are really intelligent. They're not just like beasts that just sit around and breathe fire and just they can speak or like telepathically communicate, and they're actually in a lot of ways more intelligent than humans, right? And sometimes they're actually very peaceful. So maybe there are like dragon sages that lived on this island, but they were oppressed by the Tenryubito, just like the Tenryubito oppressed the world and take slaves and everything. And then the dragons, maybe when Roger and Garp showed up, they freaking freed all of the dragons that were the leaders, and they're like, fine, screw this, thank you for saving us, namaste, Garp and Roger, but now we will hide our islands so that the Tenryubito will never oppress us again. Magic dragon mist spell. Maybe. But yeah, now, why was Rox there? That's a question. Rox was there. I like to think that maybe Rox attacked the island first, and then Roger and Garp got involved, okay? So yeah, maybe Rox, he was trying to become king of the world. He knew, it was connected to the world government or in the Tenryubito in some way, and if the dragons were really around back then he, getting the power of the dragons would definitely be something. Rox might have realized, like, hey, the Tenryubito control these dragons and they're flying around everywhere. Maybe if I go to God Valley, if I find that place where the dragons are and I can take control of the dragons, then I'll be king of the world. And then he gets there and the Tenryubito sound the alarm bell, Garp shows up, Roger shows up, and then they beat him down. And then after that, the world government takes a broom and just like, all right, we're just gonna sweep all of that crap under the freaking table. So, Garp, you're the hero of the Marines now. Good job. You sure you don't want that promotion? All right, fine. And then Roger goes on to become, make a big name for himself, become king of the pirates. And then we know the story from there. So yeah, that's the situation with God Valley. Can't really talk much about the geography because we don't know it yet, but that's my general idea. It used to be the place where the Tenryubito cultivated and bred and raised their dragons, and now it's currently somewhere hidden through the power of magic dragon spells. Yep. Alright, thanks for watching, everybody. This will be Tekking101 sailing off majestically into the blue yonder. Okay, dragons apparently, caw like crows now. All right. That's one of the dragons that didn't quite make it. Like, one of the dragons that hatches out of the egg and starts, like, making pig noise. It's like, all right, I don't think that dragon, there might not be everything right with that dragon, All right, have a good one, everybody. Signing out.